Hey guys, welcome back for another Trekyards podcast.
In the same room. How this is a rare but amazing feat of green screen, CG, chroma keying, which is the same thing, and just this guy is actually a body double, and I put a CG head on him. It's real high advanced tech here at Trekyards, Canadian HQ.
Exactly.
What's the topic today, Stuart?
Is Canon important?
Yes.
That's the end of the podcast.
So until next week, guys.
Please like the video, subscribe to the channel.
Okay. Well, first of all, for the audience, what is Canon? What is obviously Canons are
Well,
World War whatever. No,
I'll get into that.
Okay.
So, pet peeve of mine: Canon, for a canon of stories and stories that interlock together and are all part of the same thing, is Canon. One end, like the camera.
Yes, Canon camera. Good.
Two ends is a weapon.
Yes.
It's something that shoots big projectiles.
Or even use the hand cannon for the small ones. Okay.
Yes.
Cool.
So
Not talking about the cannons. Talking about Canon.
Canon, yes.
Okay, now in the context of stories, a lot of things are one-offs, like a movie or like a TV miniseries. They have not enough in them to have a canon, like a single movie or whatever. Things like a Star Trek or a Star Wars or whatever, they multiple stories where the producers care about making it consistent, and consistency means that you can rely on certain rules. For example, if a villain gets killed in the first episode and he comes back second episode, there's no canon to the story, and the audience is thinking hair. But if he stays dead, then there's a sense of reality and just legitimacy in the universe. Mm-hmm. So, is canon always important, or is it a Star Trek staple?
The problem with Star Trek is there's so much in-universe stuff that contradicts itself that canon isn't even canon.
And we've talked multiple times, this guy is very clever about the Enterprise era being potentially not canon because of all the timeline changes. There's so many different potential universes, and they all potentially conflict, But in the official ruling of CBS and whatever, canon is what appears on screen, either movie or TV show primarily. So not games, not books, not magazines, not comics. Although occasionally they do say this other thing is canon.
For example, Star Trek the Animated Series was not considered canon, except for the episode Yesteryear. I think it's since been changed that TAS is canon.
I've heard
now.
multiple, because you can't rectify the holodeck so much, because the holodecks canon, the aliens on the bridge. I mean, it's difficult.
Yeah, but at least Yesteryear is canon. That was the one that was considered canon to mesh with the mock time. So, yeah, there's always exceptions to the rules. They'd like to do that.
It's like the Countdown comic for the JJ-verse is meant to be canon.
Yes.
So that is reality, but then is it now prime canon because they talk about stuff in our universe? I don't know. Well,
yeah, it's all the lead up before the crossover, so I would say it's all good.
But that means that future is set in stone. But we know that we're probably going to alter that because no one really wants that future. But then is that just not JJ canon rather than, or the Kelvin timeline canon, even if it is pre...
Headaches.
Already big questions. But is the Star Trek canon important?
I would say yes, but at the same time, there's so many little problems with it that you gotta.
Throw an example. I mean, just off the top of your head, I mean, what's a problem that you that makes you think canon is almost a flexible term?
The whole we've broken the time barrier thing from the cage. I mean, it could just be different. Because we already had warp with Enterprise, right?
Yes.
So there's things like that are kind of like, huh? Like it could be new verbiage that they're using, but it doesn't make sense to go from warp to we've broken the time barrier and then go back to warp for TOS, right? So maybe Captain Pike and the cage is an alternate timeline too.
Very possible.
Wow.
Now that's obviously just the realism of, or the realistic nature that it was a 60s TV pilot which was rebooted into its own, that's a reality of that situation. One canon problem that I was linked to is Star Trek 4 Voyage Home, that there is a bird of prey, which you know the size of, it's 50-ish meters long. It's a small ship, very few rooms, scout ship, Burrell class, and yet in the movie we see it be several times larger than it is at one scene, and then several times smaller, and then suddenly really small with a hatch. I mean, there's this visible, definitive, you can scale this thing, and yet it changes throughout the movie. That's just for cool shots, but that is canon. Each time you see it, it's canon, and yet the ship does change. But it's canon, so what does that mean? Do we think the Bird of Prey is a TARDIS? Does it change in size with no explanation? I mean, is it because it's canon?
Bird of Prey's always change in size, even in the Next Generation and stuff. Yeah. I don't know.
Because it's canon, Stu, isn't it?
It is.
But
it's flexible canon.
Yeah.
I don't know. See, to say that canon is just stuff that's seen on screen and stuff, it really bugs me because there's so much good material out there that should be considered canon, in my opinion. Stuff like the technical manual, even if it is Franz Joseph and Gene Roddenberry didn't approve of it after he did at first and then he didn't, and it's just personal little grudges or vendettas. I don't know. It's just odd. Things like that make a lot of sense, I think, should be included as canon. But then again, we've said this before too with Trek fandom. Have your own headcanon. Everyone does. Kind of pick and choose what you want to add into your canon, and I know it's not official canon then, but
I think a big problem is that Star Trek is the entity, the storytelling is designed for television, right? Mm-hmm. Movies were good, but some people prefer it. We all want it back on TV. So that's the medium it is meant to be in. Hence why that is the law of canon. If you can just say this book is canon, then suddenly the artists who have been brought onto the TV show that may not even be a fan of Star Trek, just want to make a good story, you've got to tell them, right, go read this technical manual and make sure nothing you write interferes with this. But they're saying, but my story is what's going to go out to millions. This book is 30 years old. Maybe, 500,000 people have read it. 300,000 have it in their collection, like they loved it. But why should I limit what I'm doing with something that most people haven't seen?
Because the important people that matter do have the book.
It's like the 2009 movie. The movie itself is not great with the storyline, but if you read the previous comic, it makes more sense. The character's fleshed out a bit, but you can't. It's like saying it can't be as much canon because most people, 90% of people, will never get that context. So they're just not going to read the comic book. So 90% of people do not understand the full story. But the thing is, the full story is the movie. The book is the extra. The comic book is the extra context, the extra canon. But since it's not the main piece, it's like. You know what I mean? If you ask 100 people down the road, what's the story, what's the backstory of whatever his name is, Nero, they won't give you the backstory, the full backstory, because it's not what they saw, and I guess it wasn't important enough to be the canons. I mean, it's like, people see what's on TV, so you can guarantee that's what everyone knows. So having external stuff and be lore is like saying, well, what if you then missed, it's like missing an episode of DS9. Well, it's your fault, but it's like saying you missed a book that was only printed 1,000 times. It's your fault. Now you won't understand something. Maybe.
Okay. So you're saying that everything that is on screen is accessible to pretty much everybody to watch.
Yes.
That's why it's considered canon.
Yes. It's the primary medium. Yeah.
Well, that's lazy.
Of who though?
I don't know. Like.
Well, it's like.
So. I don't know. It's just because there's so much good content out there. And then to just everything that's on screen is the only thing that matters. Well, that's just
matters
silly.
is different. Matters is different because people obviously. I mean, think about Rick Sternbach and Andrew Pro. They put things in technical manuals which are then used in the show. So it doesn't matter. It's just that it's not the law of the land. Like everything else, we can all use as what makes sense, especially if it's from the designers themselves. But like it can be changed if need be for the story. I mean, obviously, the obvious example is yesterday's Enterprise. It was canon to have a ship. But most people wouldn't have known that was a sea. Like you wouldn't. Most fans in their stand definition, some still black and white, wouldn't have said that fourth ship in that wall. That is the Enterprise C. Damn, the ship looks different. Even though it's there, it's such a small part. So they just made a new thing. But it was a technical reason why they had to do it, and that's now the canon.
I don't know. Like. I see what you're saying, and I do agree that, the canon should be accessible to everybody. But, oh, man.
Okay.
It's a tough call.
One more question. So, the Titan novels?
Yes.
If you want to consider all this stuff's canon, that means if you ever show the Titan on screen, you have to have Sean's ship, the entire crew as depicted with those names, which means the writers of those have to be brought in to maybe write the lines, or they're writing the lines wrongly because they're wrong, the wrong characters, like the wrong voice from that character. Like, do you need, now that's been written, if you go into the future, they have to bring that stuff in.
They don't, though. They won't, because a lot of times when things get put on screen, they change it for the sake of being on screen.
But do you think that should be verbatim now included because it's now the written down thing? Is every book canon enough to you as a wide thing that now any future or past Trek or middle Trek should be considered? We have to now link into those books. So if a random writer writes that Kirk had a secret twin brother, if he wrote it once, should that now, because it's a book, it says...
That's what I was just going to say, actually, was because there's so many writers out there that can write pretty much anything, get it published, and then so their way of saying canon is their way of keeping control of their property, and only certain people are allowed to write canon.
Yeah. And obviously we rely on them deciding who's which and what to be able to do our show, to be able to tell these flowing narratives of how a ship makes sense because they've kept it consistent, for the most part anyway.
Yeah, so I understand why they do it, why they say it is canon, and it does make sense, but at the same time, I've got my own established headcanon things that I grew up with that I believed, and I'm going to always believe, regardless of somebody telling me that that's not the case or whatever.
Well, it is all fictional, so why not?
It's not fictional.
Oh, it's not fictional, and his timeline's the real one.
It's true.
But that bloody Third World War, man, really messed us up. Canon.
That was a secret World War.
Yeah.
Nobody knew about it. Or
I think we have eugenic soldiers now. Like I think we have the drug guys. They're very soon, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
On every corner in Canada.
Yes.
Go to school. Yeah.
Wow.
Yes.
So is canon important? Yes, if you're on a pirate ship. Because it's good.
Cannons. Well, more than one cannon.
Yes.
Because one cannon wouldn't do very well. More than one cannon, you'd have more. Is Star Trek the most important canon? Like, do you care about the Star Wars canon? Do you care about Battlestar Galactica canon? Do you care about the Firefly canon?
No. Overall, I'd say no to those. Star Wars a little bit more so. Like, you've even said you read all the EU books.
Yeah.
Extended
Amazing
Universe
books.
And they're amazingly done.
Better than the movies.
Should have been considered canon. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, guess what? We're doing a new movie. And no. So screw all you guys.
But then to fit it around, we know exactly where everyone dies. We know exactly who goes in relationships with who. Like, it's such
But see, that expanded universe for Star Wars for you is like FASA was for me.
Yes. No, yeah. We've made that comparison before. Yeah. For me, that's the more creative, because they didn't have to limit themselves with what can be told on screen. They could do these great stories. They could do these great battles. They just couldn't physically pull off. And then episode 7 comes out, and they're trying to make money. They're trying to make a story that they can tell in 3 parts, whereas the books, it's just 190. A script is 90 pages. That's for 90 minutes, and this book is 300. 500 pages. There's more story in one chapter than there is in 7 scenes.
Yeah.
There's conference scenes with Thrawn that take up like 6 pages because they're really bloody amazing.
But you would like for the expanded universe to still be canon, or considered canon, at least the major events of those expanded universes.
I would love I would love there to be 2 different shows. I would love to see those things told because they were amazing, but at the same time, obviously that's not what they want to do. So I'm fine with that because it's their property. They own it, and they can do things. Well, it's like taking a book that was written in 1983. They can only envision her so much, but with modern technology, you can suddenly make a lightsaber that has whereas in those days they'd say obviously it's only blue or green or red.
Yeah.
They didn't even include purple because it didn't exist yet. So no, I'm happy for them to do their own thing because it's interesting, but I'd like to see what I saw. But then again, I read it and I saw it in my head, and it's potentially better than what they could do in CG.
Well, exactly, yeah. And yeah, I don't know.
Am I just echoing your feelings though? Have I just basically said everything that you would have said for FASA?
Yes, absolutely. And I don't know. The whole canonista people that what you think isn't true because it's not canon.
But are we not considered those sorts of people?
I don't think so.
I hope not either.
I believe a lot of stuff. I believe a lot of stuff that's not considered canon to be canon. So I don't want to be called a canonista. I find that's very close-minded. I think you can know what's established canon and accept it, and
because it is canon.
Because it obviously is the definition of canon.
Yes.
It is canon.
Yes.
But at the same time, have your own little things that you can go, okay, well, in my universe, this is what happens. But when you're having a conversation with somebody that might not know your information, yeah, you stick to the canon stuff.
Or
That's
like we do in
perfectly fine.
Trekyards, we say, but in this thing happened, and it's interesting.
Yeah.
You know, like I think you know, we talked about in a book, or we talk about the books. You know, oh, this ship can do this in this book. Well, it's not canon. You can't separate in canon, but it can. It does in 3 books.
Yeah.
And the design said it could separate potentially. So
Yeah,
it's interesting, and we specifically clarify. So, yeah.
Yes.
Um.
I think Star Trek's a good universe to have a established canon, though, because it is so varied and so many people have written about it over the years that I think, yes, to have established canon is very important for a franchise like Star Trek. Other franchises that aren't quite as in depth or all-encompassing as Star Trek, I think they don't really care about as much about their canon. You know, if a book's written or whatever about like Battlestar Galactica before the new one was made or something, it was just like you know, whatever, right? But yeah, I think Star Trek is there's so many facets to Star Trek that you have to kind of stay within the guidelines. So yes, I think canon is important.
But it isn't the most important, or is it still the most important overall? But we understand there's facets to everything, and we can live in those facets as well.
Yes, it is the most important. It is the overriding.
Okay.
This is literally canon. There's nothing you can do about it. Basically,
It's the brick wall.
yes, and it's sometimes it's a painful reality.
Yes.
When you're a fan and you like something that's not considered canon.
You're throwing the Fassa pie against a brick wall. It just smashes and
Yeah.
goes down. Yeah.
Yeah, and it does hurt sometimes, but at
Yeah.
the same time, I totally understand why they do it and why it needs to be what it is.
But it opens up discussions, and it creates different things. And I think it's actually more important to be able to, because most people know the canon because that's what they've watched. You know, you've seen all the Star Trek movies and all the Star Trek shows, but you've not read the books, you've not read the comics. So suddenly what we do, and you obviously you're writing, you teach me stuff like this is the extended universe canon. You know, this is what could be. This is other interesting stories in the Trek universe, and I think a lot of what you do is you try and rectify and try and find middle ground. You know, if in one book says Enterprise can go warp 37, it's like no, it can't. But maybe that one situation caused a thing that caused a thing, and you talk about that, and it's interesting, you know.
And human history is canon because it's human history.
Written by victors.
True. But there's also a lot of fictional stuff that's been written about humanity.
Shakespeare.
Exactly.
Sherlock
So,
Holmes. Sherlock Holmes feels real to a lot of people, but it's not.
A lot of people think it was
Exactly.
and he's got his own established canon of this, 74 stories and all that. But yeah, so what we've lived and what we've experienced in our history is obviously canon, but there's been like religious texts and everything written that kind of go into other aspects. Should that be considered part of human canon, or should they just be ignored because those events might not have ever happened? I don't know, because that's how I look at the Star Trek universe and the books and all the extra stuff. I don't know. It's an interesting question, and it's a debate which will never be resolved. People are always going to disagree with each other about this. So, yeah, I don't know.
But it's fun. It's good to talk about it.
Well, hopefully our 2 cents mean something and add up to more than 2 cents.
At least $1. At least $1.
Yeah.
Canadian dollar though, the real dollar.
Yes, sure.
So tune in, guys, next week from the Trekyards podcast. I had a lot of fun today, and if you want to support the show, Patreon or our website, trekkers.com. Give what you can as often as you can.
Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and definitely share this video or all of our videos. Anything you find interesting, a ship you really like, share it
We've
with.
probably done it.
Yeah, share it with people that might not have seen it, because share your passion. And we got to continue making more Trekyards canon, because Trekyards is its own canon. I wonder if there's any fan fiction Trekyards scripts out there.
That is a big question. Until next time, guys. Until next time, guys.
I'm Captain Foley.
And I'm Commander Goggins. I'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.
Bye.